And good morning, Newton Falls. I'm Dave Lynch, and I'm the city manager here for the city of Newton Falls. And this is our morning briefing related, generally speaking, to the coronavirus. That's the reason we've been doing these things. And we've been putting these on Monday through Saturday, and we take Sundays off. But I will announce the fact that with things beginning to settle down and open up a little bit, we are going to be going to doing these twice a week in the morning at 7:30, not 6 days a week. We'll be doing them on Tuesday mornings and on Friday mornings. So those of you that like to put on that cup of coffee and watch the early morning briefings, you're going to have to find something else to do at 7:30 in the morning, 4 days of the week at least. But we do want to give folks a little bit of the flavor of what's been happening on a local basis. Of course, pay attention to the governor and Dr. Axon, and also to what the presidential task force people have been saying, although they're not convening quite as often as they used to. This morning, we're going to take a little bit different tack, and that is we're going to be talking about some other things, not necessarily directly related to the coronavirus. But before I did that, I wanted to make sure I said something about the fact that we have a situation going on in our country and in our major cities related to the terrible murder by the policeman that took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Minnesota is a place that seems pretty far away from Ohio, but it's pretty far away from places like Los Angeles, Washington, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Cleveland, and Youngstown. And yet some of this insurrection that's been taking place is related to that event that took place last week in Minnesota. And I guess all I really wanted to say to everybody was, let's be in prayer for our country. It's a difficult time right now, and we need to make sure that peace and order are restored. And of course, protesters have a First Amendment right, but a protester that loots and burns and destroys property is no longer a protester. They're a vandal and they're a criminal. And that's one of the reasons why it's important for us to have our civil order protected. So let's be in prayer, but let's not get thrown away from the idea that criminal activity remains criminal activity. The terrible murder of this gentleman that was killed in Minneapolis shouldn't be a reason to commit other crimes and destroy other people's property. And the property that's destroyed, generally speaking, is that of innocent entrepreneurs. Murder that he was a victim of, it's actually really destroying the message altogether. Well, folks, today I said we're going to talk about something that's different, and that's because I want to commemorate the fact that in Newton Falls, there is an event that is stamped on the memories of people from Newton Falls, because in 1985, 35 years ago, just yesterday, a terrible tornado, an expression of nature's power and wrath, landed upon the city of Newton Falls. And I wanted to talk to somebody who went through that experience personally. And in fact, we've got someone, it's the second time he's been on our program, but the reason he's on again is because he has a very dramatic story of what happened on May 31st, 1985, in Newton Falls when that tornado ripped through our city. And on the live line is Jamie Mayfield. Good morning, Jamie. How are you?
Good morning. Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Jamie, you have a unique story about what happened 35 years ago in Newton Falls because you were in the thick of it. Jamie, what happened?
Well, we were at a eighth grade graduation party on West Broad, Charleston Road area at a home there. Boy, I remember it pretty clearly. It was Friday night, 6:35 p.m., May 31st, 6:35 on the dot. But we were the eighth grade graduating class of the St. Mary and Joseph School, having a graduation party at that time. But there were about 25 of us, 13 and 14-year-olds gathered in an unattached two-car garage. It was a great day, really hot day, and suddenly it began to rain and storm rather violently, and we had hail, and we didn't know what was about to happen at that time. No warning whatsoever. Apparently, the tornado began to touch down pretty much upon us. It was not very far away that the tornado came through the trees and approached the ground and everything, and there we were, no warning. The garage that we were in just absolutely exploded. It was a somewhat unfinished garage, so there were no windows in it yet. I remember seeing kids being blown down just from the wind initially coming through the window spaces. But the garage and everybody just went flying. A lot of kids were hurt very severely. About, I would say, 4, maybe 5 at the most out of 25 were able to get up and walk around. But at any rate, it was a war zone. It's tough to repeat the story without the flashes of sheer carnage. Many kids were hurt quite badly.
Well, Jamie, you came upon you encountered somebody that needed some help yourself. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. I briefly got knocked out and woke back up and I got blown over into the neighbor's driveway, but I started to walk over into the area where the garage was and tried to help kids along the way. But I made it over to the garage where the garage
was left with a 3/4 mile reminder the tornado had been there.
To this area where a very large, at least 50-foot oak tree was. I could hear whimpering coming out from underneath it. I actually, unbelievably, was able to pick up and move this huge oak tree. It had a 5-foot stump base, and the thing was huge. I was able to, by the grace of God, move it, and underneath that was a Cub Cadet lawnmower from the 60s, one of the heavy ones. I was able to pick that up and move it, and there was a young lady underneath that that had a very severe head injury, and I was able to help and assist her for a grand total of about an hour and a half, breathing for her off and on, and got credited with saving her life at that time. There were a lot of other details in with that, but that's the story in a nutshell.
Wow. Jamie, that's very traumatic. So, well, first of all, through the grace of God, thank you for your courage. I know that 35 years ago, these things happened, but as you mentioned, as it says, if it happened yesterday, especially in the minds of so many, and your tale of courage and drama, there were a lot of tales of courage and drama in Newton Falls that day, and that young lady survived, right, Jamie?
Yes, sir. Yep. She
Yeah.
was fine. She was, amen to that. She was fine.
Yeah. And the other thing, Jamie, to some extent, it's the miracle of May 31st, 1985. Tornadoes were sort of in the region, and people were killed all over the region. But in the city of Newton Falls, which was hit with a sledgehammer effect of the tornado, we had no deaths. And I'm sure when you look back at it and review the devastation and in your own mind what happened because you were there, it must seem miraculous to you to this very day.
It does. Yeah, it is. Overwhelming, just absolutely overwhelming. There were 2 children, as I was told along the way afterwards. 2 of the children had actually flatlined in the squads on the way to the hospital, and were brought back at the same time there. But you're right; it's an absolute miracle that no one perished in Newton Falls. Incidentally, the tornado was at its strongest point with its most power when it hit Newton Falls. We were in the beginning of the roughly 60-mile path where that tornado was on the ground. So it's believed that, of course, when a tornado first touches down, that's its strongest point. And Newton Falls got the strongest point of that massive tornado.
Mm. Well, Jamie, we have developed more techniques for early warning systems, as you know, and I want to remind people that in Newton Falls, we've set up a system called Code Red, and you can go to onsolve.com, ONSOLVE.com, and sign up, and every resident of Newton Falls is eligible for free to be part of OnSolve. We've done that as part of our municipal responsibility to make sure people have access to it. And I'm imagining, Jamie, as you go through your memories of this thing, you wish you had had a Code Red early warning system back then.
Very much so. Very much. That would have helped quite a bit. It was kind of crazy. I was actually riding a bicycle up around the 6th and 9th Street area during this party right before it hit. The rain had started, I think, when I was about at 6th Street. I beat feet back, but the sirens, allegedly the sirens in town, did not go off until the tornado was in the middle of town, or barely almost approaching the middle of town.
Yeah,
that was the technology that we had back then. Someone
sure.
manually had to go to the station and sound the sirens.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, when the freight train noise of a tornado is approaching, pretty hard to hear the siren, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's always, what's that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, folks, please go to onsolve.com, ONSOLVE, and register for the Code Red app for your cell phone. And by the way, you'll get an early warning, a big time early warning on your phone in the form of an email, in the form of a text message, in the form of a phone call to your hardline, and in the form of a phone call to your cell phone as well if you register. So folks, you've heard the horror that Jamie Layfield just described. If you want to make sure that that can be avoided again, we don't have the technology to stop tornadoes from forming, at least not yet. But now we have the technology to really give you the kind of warning that you need. And we want to use this anniversary date to remind folks to get involved in that. The other thing is, OnSolve lets us give you early warning of some other type of emergency as well. And in these days of civil unrest and things of that nature, having that consolation of early warning about just about anything that's happening in your neighborhood is something that we want to make sure everybody takes advantage of. So go to the Code Red app at www.onsolve.com/register. And the great survivors and also entrepreneurs in Newton Falls who operates the Car Clinic, there at 900 Warren Road. He and his wife Diana have been a fixture here in Newton Falls for many, many years. And I just want to say thanks to Jamie Layfield for giving us that very dramatic story of how you personally were in the middle of that tornado event that happened back in 1985. Thanks for reminding us, Jamie, about the power of Mother Nature and how we need to respect her. Jamie, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you so much. Folks,
care.
that was
Thank you.
Jamie Layfield, who told us about, well, what in some ways some might describe as the most dramatic event that's ever happened in the history of Newton Falls. And in that context, it just wasn't that long ago, was it, folks? Mother Nature's power will not be denied and cannot be controlled, whether it's tornadic activity, hurricanes, floods. And a lot of people don't realize that parts of Ohio are actually in a very important seismic zone where we can even experience an earthquake at some eventuality. We don't know what's going to happen with the way the earth works and Mother Nature's tendencies in terms of meteorology and things of that nature. So register for onsolve.com. Well, that brings us to the end of another program. Folks, please be in faith, especially as I mentioned at the top of the show. Be in prayer for our country. These are tough times right now. We will persevere. Here we are in the middle of the coronavirus crisis, and now we're experiencing great insurrection and unrest, which threatens the concept of a law and order, civilized society. What makes America great is that our freedoms are protected by our respected law enforcement. And when they lose the ability to do that, or insurrection stands in the way of us being able to express our regular liberties, somebody who I'm close to last night in the city of Youngstown had a difficult time and almost got into a serious accident on the freeway, not because of a drunk driver or because of debris on the road, but because there were protesters trying to shut down the freeway. That's not protest, that's criminal activity. So everybody, they used to say the sergeant, when he did roll call at the end of the roll call for the police officers in a show called the Hill Street Blues, he'd look everybody in the eye and say, be careful out there. Well, I say that to you today. Well, as I say at the end of each program, God bless America and God bless the city of Newton Falls.